Today, we're going to be talking about why it feels like everyone, quote unquote, has ADHD, especially lately. Hi, I'm Anushka,
And I'm Saika.
and welcome to Girls at ADHD.
We're two ADHD therapists with ADHD here to help you laugh, rant, cry, and unmask your way through adulting with ADHD.
This season, we're back with more unhinged moments.
Except now with guests.
So buckle up, hit play at 2 times speed.
And come spiral with us as we make sense of our beautifully chaotic brains together.
Though I think this was brought to our attention by somebody who actually listens to the podcast, and they sent us a message around it. And it was this concept of like the overuse of like, oh, I'm a bit ADHD too. Or like, the question that we hear so often when we're in spaces and you tell someone you have ADHD, it's like, well, doesn't everyone have ADHD now? And
Yeah, the number of times I've had that, especially now that I'm in Sydney, I'm like meeting new
yeah,
people. And every person I tell, literally, that's the line they tell me. And it takes me all my willpower to not throw my ADHD rage at them.
yeah, it's like I'm not, they treat it like a personality trend, like it's astrology. It's like I'm saying I have ADHD and you're hearing, oh, I'm a Cancerian, you know?
Yeah. And like, who died and made you a doctor? I'm like,
Correct. Oh my God, 100%. But then, I do see like a little bit more concern in some areas, like sometimes with people who are actually like in professional, like professions and stuff that are like, have that concern around like overdiagnosis, a bit of frustration with this online self-diagnosis, or a misunderstanding of what ADHD actually is. Because like I think we talked about this in our first episode, but it's so fucking hard to explain to people. Hi, sometimes I want to do things and sometimes I can't.
yes. I mean, hopefully, throughout this episode, we also figure out how to answer that question when someone asks. Because I still get stuck when someone says everyone has ADHD. And I'm like,
No, I just ask a counter question. I'm like, why do you say that?
yeah, yeah. And then there was this really cool analogy that I read that I always use now, where it's like people didn't discover more stars, they just developed a telescope to see the stars.
So true. So true. What does it quote unquote feel like everyone has ADHD lately? What's changing? What vibes have shifted in like is Mercury in retrograde? What's the situation?
Firstly, Mercury has been in retrograde all year, it seems. That's what all my TikTok tarot cards ladies are telling me. But yeah,
When
anyway,
they come up on your For You page, you're going through something because
literally,
tarot lady pops up and I'm like, fuck.
yes, yes. I'm like, oh God, I'm in it. I don't know if I want to leave, but I'm in it. Um, but that's actually a good segue because I think the first thing that has changed is social media, right? The presence of like so many people talking about ADHD on TikTok, Instagram, and podcasts. Like people are suddenly seeing behaviors that they've lived their whole lives named and like normalized and explained.
It's so true because if you're like the way that we grew up was hearing things like you're too much, you're so dramatic, why can't you just focus? You're a bit lazy. So I think finding the ADHD content online has been really helpful in that sense because I have a lot of clients who will come through there where they've watched like a ton of reels or they've seen enough things on social media where they're like, oh, actually, that's something that I experience. But like, I think people are also self-aware enough that they're coming into like at least in my assessment sessions being like, hey, I mean, it's not that I've just seen it in a friend, but I've seen it online and I resonated with X, Y, and Z, but I'm really aware of the fact that I might not have it. Can you teach me the difference between traits and things like that? So I think social media, absolutely, you're right, it has changed everything. I think the other thing that I love bringing up with people is like the pandemic was this diagnostic earthquake.
That's where I got diagnosed during the
Same.
pandemic.
Yeah, so many people. So many people during the pandemic. And like, I think the thing is like, when I look back at it, I'm like, why were so many people diagnosed during the pandemic and during lockdown? It's because we all of our distractions disappeared. Like, I don't know about you, but I was suddenly like living alone. And then I could do anything I needed to at whatever time. I could just stay up at 10 p.m. and write up my reports and then go to bed and then wake up late. And like, like that was fine. Or like, I wasn't feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated. I got to choose what my stimulation looked like. And then I got back out into like the regular world after lockdown was over. And I'm like, something feels off. Like this was already feeling off, but now it feels more off. I think it just peeled back all of the layers for a lot of people. It's like,
But also, I think during the pandemic, the reason I realized it is because, yes, the pandemic was horrible for everyone, but being able to work from home, not having to stick to like the 9 to 5 schedule, being able to stim and like do whatever in the middle of the workday and not be
yeah,
like in a hot desking situation, I was calmer, like actually calmer.
it's not masked by the busyness, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I also think it was like, the social aspects of like, it was easier as a neurodivergent individual to maintain friendships for me during like the pandemic
Yeah.
because I had all the time in the world and the dopamine to be able to text my friends back. I was going on all my walks. I could do a Zoom call. If I didn't want to see people, I didn't have to use a shitty excuse. I could just be like, oh no.
Yes, COVID.
Like it was legit. Like you didn't have to. It sounds terrible, but you actually just didn't have to see people. Like, and it was like I think even after lockdown, of the first few like months, it was people were still getting used to going back out into the world. So like you were kind of allowed to. It felt like you were allowed to stay at home more, and I
Mm.
like that. And it's like I do. I wasn't doing the thing where my calendar felt empty enough for me to go and fill it up and like accidentally, the time blindness kick in. And
Yeah,
I wasn't as overpacked during like the pandemic because there was no the parameters. It was scaffolded in such a way that I didn't.
exactly. In the parameters, you had to work within the parameters.
Uh huh.
Was helpful.
I need someone like the government to set me some parameters.
You might regret saying that.
Well, just like a quick like a 5 day everybody stay home. Stay home for 5 days. If whoever I can't remember who the premier is anymore. I don't know her name. But like if she was like tomorrow, everyone stay home for 5 days, I'd be like fucking great. And then we just open again. Like it's fine. Everyone take a break.
Just take a break.
I think also during the pandemic though, like mental health culture has shifted, right? And I think also at the last couple of years that I've at least noticed a shift, whether that's with social media or awareness or lockdown, I mean, I think, yeah, lockdown especially because the dialogue around mental health and being inside.
Yeah, people like actually cared about it for the first time ever.
Well, you had time to care about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but also I think everyone was kind of impacted by it. So everyone was just like, all right, this is a thing.
This is the thing, exactly. And so I think it's also become more socially acceptable to like see, and when the government comes out and they're like, you've got 20 Medicare sessions instead of 10, and is also acknowledged that it's struggling with stuff. It's like everyone experiencing it means that it became more socially acceptable for you to seek help, talk about therapy, use like the language around things. And so it's not that like, ADHD popped out of nowhere. It's just like when we started learning the language, to like environmental factors meant that like either symptoms were exacerbated or shifted and went down a little bit. And three, like the language around mental health itself is shifting, and it's not just ADHD. We see it with autism, we see it in like specific learning disabilities, we see it in depression, anxiety, trauma. Like people are willing to speak about stuff a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think, it's not just the government, it's because like I guess because of the pandemic and all that stuff, everyone started realizing they have ADHD. So they did start talking about it to their friends more. And then maybe, because that's how I found out, because you were like, you have ADHD. And I was like, you is me, I is you.
I need to keep a tally because I got diagnosed because Niharika, like one of my friends, was like,
Yeah.
she's like, I'm on the medication, blah, blah, blah. And I was talking to her, I'm like, oh, this sounds familiar. She's like, babes, you have it. And I was like, oh. So then I went and got tested and I was like, oh, I have it. Then I met you, I told you. But I've told so many, do you know how many people have gotten diagnosed? Because I'm like, yep. Because I used to document my ADHD journey as well when I first got diagnosed. And like the number of people who've been like, I watched your stories. Recently it's been like, I heard the podcast, or like, oh, the things that you're talking about, that sounds like it's familiar. Like in personal life, professional life is different. I tell people like directly, I'm like, do you think? But like, it's just, yeah, it's so fascinating. And also like we find neurodivergence, right? Like
Yeah, we travel in packs like a wolf.
black wolves.
Yeah.
We can't leave it, but that should be a t-shirt.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so the point is that if it feels like everyone has ADHD, it's because many people who were invisible before finally feel a little bit more visible for a range of different reasons.
Feel visible, and maybe there's just a safer environment around speaking up about it and seeking your diagnosis.
Correct, correct. And I think that there's also, if we're going to look at the stigma around ADHD, in the 80s and 90s, a lot of it was because um, there was this misconception that you have to be on medication if you have ADHD. And so a lot of people were scared of like, oh, if I get diagnosed, do I have to go on medication and stuff? So there's more information about that kind of thing as well now, where people are like, oh, actually, I don't have to necessarily go on meds if I don't want to. This is not going to be like some really wild life altering things. I can actually just scaffold my life. That's manageable too still. So I think we're destigmatizing so many things that surround ADHD as well.
Yeah, and I guess like that is the point of destigmatization. The less
Yeah,
stigma there is, the more you're going to talk about it, the more people are going to come up with it. So
correct.
it's, yeah.
But also, Saika, doesn't everybody forget things sometimes? Don't don't all people procrastinate? Doesn't everyone get distracted? Isn't that just the human experience?
Yes, everyone does get distracted. Everyone does procrastinate. That is the human experience. But there's a difference between having a human experience sometimes and having the diagnostic criteria for ADHD.
And it being an impairment.
Yeah, you're doing the assessments and stuff. So like what is the difference? What are you taking into account when you are looking for ADHD?
I'm looking at the frequency, the intensity, the impact. It's not like, did you forget your keys? It's like, do you forget your keys so often it disrupts your functioning of relationships? It's not like, are you distracted sometimes during boring meetings? It's like, is your attention regulation so inconsistent that it affects your work, your self esteem, your safety, your identity? Because like, people don't realize that safety is a really big one. Because there are some days I'm driving and I reach home and I didn't realize I was on autopilot. I have had 1 million
Oh my
thoughts along
god.
the way. I've
Yes.
missed an exit. Some days I've like started driving at night, forgotten to turn on like the lights that shine onto the
Oh yeah,
road.
yeah, I did that once. Oh my god.
And I kept driving. I was like, something feels off. Oh, it's this. It's like you were so caught up in your own mind. Or like there's a sequence of events that go past each, like that lead to like a fucking ADHD disaster, or like food. Like you can't tell me that you go to make a cup of tea, and that's how I ask people. I'm like, what do you do? I'm like, how do you make a cup of tea for yourself or coffee? And they're like, ah. And an ADHD will always be like, I go to boil the kettle, and then while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, I go to do other things. And I'm like, cool.
Yes.
And I'm like, how many times do you have to boil the kettle? Because that's it. Like it's the fact that you forget and your working memory is so short that you just like put a teacup somewhere and then you put it in the microwave, then you forget about it. Or you do stupid things like I'm so distracted sometimes. I'll be holding like the milk, and I'm still on the tea thing because it's such an easy example. I'll be holding the cup of milk, thinking about something. I'll go and put it in the cupboard, and I'm like, that's not where you belong. Like things just get put in places that I'm like, I'm so absent-minded. But it affects life, right? It's a pervasive, lifelong neurodevelopmental condition. If I was going to see it as a psych who assesses this every day, it's pervasive. It affects your life and it has a strong impact. Everyone procrastinates sometimes, but not everyone has consequences to that. It's not like one off. I feel very passionately about this.
Of course. I mean, it's your job.
We see it also across like the other thing that I ask my clients is like, is it consistent across different
Life stages.
yeah, life stages, but also in different areas of your life. So are you noticing this stuff at work or school, in relationships, in your emotional regulation, in your time management, in your friendships, in your family, in like all these different aspects of your life? Do you see these traits come up? Because it might be that you procrastinate schoolwork, but you're fine with everything else. If you're like you and me, we procrastinate our work, We procrastinate our daily like living activities, you know.
Literally us planning this episode 5 minutes before we start.
Yeah, literally this, you know, like sending emails out, like we procrastinate texting other people back. I think you're the only person I message consistently because I don't have to engage in like it's not deep and emotional. I can just text you whatever, and I know you're not gonna care. I ask you some left field shit all of the time because I can just put it in the chat and speak my mind. Can't do that anywhere else. Like, you know, everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, that is like, I understand the psychological assessment because I did the psychological assessment and they like
Mm.
went through the impact, the different life stages, and like really got into the
Mm.
details of it. But then I also did a psychiatrist one, and it was just like a tick box kind of thing. So I'm like, I can understand why people would think this isn't a real thing if they're just going through a psychiatrist.
Oh, absolutely. And because like with the psychiatrist one as well, they're just like check, check, check. Do you meet the criteria? And then like you're done. And it's interesting because we use the same thing. So we're both using the DSM criteria. The difference is a psychologist is going to ask you more questions, which I would like if you're not fully like if you can afford to go to the psychologist or if you're like not looking for medication, go to the psychologist because you're going to learn so much more about your habits and what actually needs to be changed in your life than if you go to a psychiatrist. I have so many people who are so confused after going to a psychiatrist and they end up having to come back anyway.
Why, the thing that everyone has ADHD narrative, how does this actually hurt people, like the real ADHDers, the people who have it?
I think it's like it's well, I mean it's deeply personal, right? When people say everyone has ADHD, it erases our like lived experience almost or the lived reality of
Yeah.
you know, like we spent childhood being punished for symptoms we couldn't control. You mask so hard that you burn out. You're told that you're gifted, but also not living up to your potential. You develop like rejection sensitivity dysphoria from decades of being misunderstood. You internalize shame as your identity. Like for us, it's not a trend. It's like, it's so like, I mean, I think for both of us, it was relieving to get the like diagnosis. Be like, oh, I am so much more gentle with myself now. I let so many things go. I'm like, it is just what it is now.
But also, like, as you said, we live like our whole lives not knowing what the fuck what's going on. And like, because we could still do life. Like we did all the stuff that we needed to do to like get by and like have a job and get our degrees and like have our relationships and all. But like because it's like it was either do or die. It's like we either do that or we're not going to survive in this world, right? So we're always like in this panic mode. And then, when you get the diagnosis and you feel that relief, and then you go to someone and then the first thing they go like, everyone has ADHD, you start second guessing yourself as well because you're
Oh my
um
God, for real.
yeah, because
Bro,
you're
I'm like, am I ADHD enough? Because it doesn't present the same every day in every situation. So I'm like, oh, maybe it's just a lie. Maybe I don't have this.
yes, everyone is lying to you. All the professionals are lying to you.
When you feel it in your soul, it's still all a lie. No, it's that, and I think it hurts as well because when I don't know, when people say things like this, it just like when people dismiss it, it hurts because it delegitimizes your like the disability. It implies that ADHD is just some kind of vibe or like a trend that you're hopping on and not something that's actually cognitively, neurologically going on in your brain. Like, yes, it's happening in my brain, but the brain, fun fact, is an organ. Like if you broke your leg, we'd be like, oh no, your leg. My brain also has issues. Oh no, my brain.
The thing controlling everything, by the way.
Most important organ.
Like what?
Who would have thunk it? Jesus.
Yeah.
I think it also like reinforces the stigma, right? Like when we dismiss it as well, because it paints ADHD people again as like being dramatic, attention seeking, using it as a productivity excuse. And again, like I think if you've understood yourself well enough, you won't use it as an excuse, you'll use it as an explanation, as with any mental health issue, right? And then I think it also silences people who need the support the most, especially people like women, people of color, queer folks, migrants, like diagnosed adults, sensitive or like masking prone kids who've already spent years being misunderstood. If you're saying to someone, oh, so like, doesn't everyone have it? Or like, isn't that just like a normal thing? Everyone feels this way. For like, we're already feeling shit about this. Don't make me feel more shit about it. I might not, you don't know the impact that's going to have. Someone might not go and seek the support they need.
Yeah, no. And I think that that is also why, like, these people, as you mentioned, the ones who need the most support, they're most likely the ones gaslighting themselves that they don't have it. Because,
Correct.
they've always been told you just have to get through things, you just have to do things. No one else is going to come help you and save you or whatever.
100%. Then the imposter syndrome kicks and you're like, who the hell am I?
Yeah. And also, like, anybody who has come to me, like, I don't diagnose people, but like, I can give them some psychoeducation around like what ADHD can feel like and stuff. But most, like, almost everyone, well, I would say everyone who comes to me and goes like, oh, I think I may have it, and the ones who actually do are like the most careful about saying they have it or not. Like, they need to know all the facts and they need to be like validated by all the professionals before they can
Yeah,
be like, yep.
it's so true. I've never diagnosed somebody who isn't like so thorough about it. The people who are coming in that, and believe it or not, this is just going to put this out there. I don't diagnose everybody that comes in with a query of ADHD. Sometimes people come in and they just don't have it. And I tell them that you just don't have this. So it's not like, and we have things that tell us whether if you're lying about stuff or not. It's just, yeah, you're so right. We scrutinize over it as an ADHD so much, like to the point that it's like, okay, now we know all of the things. Because I mean, like, who's choosing this lifestyle, bro?
Exactly. Like, why would you choose this as a lifestyle?
Make myself hard, like life harder for myself every day.
Literally, literally, so stupid.
I guess like if not everybody, if so so if not everyone has it, what explains the rise? So we've talked about like, COVID, we've talked about the stigma, we've talked about um mental health and like I guess literacy rising. I think the other thing is that like from a psychological standpoint, we misdiagnosed ADHD for decades, and that was especially within those minority groups that I was talking about. So girls and women, gifted kids, quiet daydreamers, people of color, queer folk, trauma survivors, kids from collectivistic cultures. If you don't look like the stereotypical hyperactive 5-year-old white boy who's bouncing off the walls, you're like ignored a lot. Like people
Yes.
will be like, "Oh, but I don't. It doesn't look like that." And we talk a lot about it in this podcast what ADHD looks like, and how it can look different for everybody. But like that was a really big factor. Like we weren't using the right things. We also weren't using the right assessment tools because assessment tools used to be a lot more biased.
And assessment tools are like based on research done around mostly white folks, right?
Yep, and men, like with everything, and men. So like now we've got better frameworks that capture things like inattentive symptoms, your emotional dysregulation, your internalized hyperactivity, your executive functioning deficits, sensory differences, trauma overlap, and in the work that we do, cultural masking as well. Like we can see all of those things.
Yeah, and I guess adults who weren't able to like get the diagnosis earlier in life due to stigma or whatever, or not like going under the radar because they're not from, I guess they're not part of that white man population. Um, I know like a lot of adults, they decided to go back and get a diagnosis and connect the dots, like say if their kids have gotten diagnosed, or say they've reached that age where your prefrontal cortex is supposed to be developed and things are supposed to start making sense, and it doesn't, and you're like, huh.
It's like I tend to forget things a lot. Is there something wrong with me? Yes. Let's find out. Yeah, 100%. And I think, yeah, I have so many parents of children come in after because they'll sit in the assessment and I'll ask the questions. They're like, checking a bit too many boxes here. Maybe it's me.
Mhm. Mm.
Um, yeah, and like maybe just never had the opportunity to like go back and reflect on that. Family getting diagnosed is a big one. People, once one person's there, it's like everyone starts coming in, which is actually really good. It means that you can function better within your relationships too. But yeah, I think it's this if you're under the impression or the misconception that people are getting diagnosed because it's trendy, it's not that. It's because they're tired of suffering without the language. And now we have the language, so why wouldn't you use it? And who doesn't want to improve their quality of life? Like who doesn't want to reduce the burnout? Who doesn't want to have better coping systems? Who doesn't want to have more consistent performance, and who doesn't want to like, reduce their chronic overwhelm? Like that's just I think very normal to want to have a better life.
Yes. Yes, because we're tired.
Yeah, surprise, surprise.
We're tired. Okay, so how do we talk about it more responsibly? Is the question.
Good question. I mean, we can celebrate awareness, right, without diluting clinical reality. I think we can acknowledge that ADHD content can feel relatable to many people, and that yes, executive functioning is a universal experience, but of course, and so like, of course, everyone's going to relate to it. Everyone's going to feel a bit like, tired or procrastination or whatever it is. But I think the resonance doesn't equal diagnosis. Only like a professional can support you with that experience. So like yeah, you can sit down and acknowledge that you might have traits, but like go through the process, learn about it. I think also being curious about things and not like I guess inviting like curiosity, not certainty. So instead of saying things like everyone has ADHD, you could be like, so many people are resonating with ADHD traits, but the clinical diagnosis depends on impairment, history, and context.
Yeah, exactly. And also just encouraging more reflective assessment. So just because you see a meme and some reels that make sense for you doesn't mean that you have it. As Anushka said, yes, you might have some traits that you relate to. Um, but maybe if it does spark that curiosity, it might be better if you like find places where you can get a professional assessment or get that developmental history, or like speak to your therapist about it and see if they have some recommendations or people to like recommend you to. And yeah, think about, there are also a lot of like screeners that you can do online as a way to like quickly check.
And a lot of therapists will offer you to do a screener like I do. I offer people to do a free screener before we do the assessment to begin with, and then I'll walk you through the process. So like yeah, it's definitely available for people to be able to do and to have that experience and just test things out because no one's going to be like go get the assessment done unless we've seen that sort of initial.
And I think it's very important that you look, especially if you're like from a different culture or you're a person of color, you get a culturally aware clinician so that they're aware of like the misdiagnosis or the underdiagnosis of people who.
Yeah, and also who understand that what's the difference between culture and your ADHD, which is going to be a whole different episode for us, but really, really important that you find a clinician who can distinguish between those two factors as well. I think validating people who do have ADHD, like
Yeah, like it doesn't hurt you to just be like, yeah, all right.
that sounds hard. Like, oh my God, my hairdresser did this so well, like the other day. So she's, bless her soul, she's so sweet. She is Punjabi, doesn't speak like, great English, does like couldn't like she was talking to me about referring a client to me who has autism. So I was trying to explain neurodivergence to her, which was like in my whatever way of trying to like, break it down. And then I was like, but like for example, like there's ADHD and autism and blah blah blah. And she's like, what's the ADHD? And then I was explaining it to her. And then I was like, I have this. And she was like, oh, she's like, you went through so many like things and you still made it so far. She's like, you've done really well then because it sounds like it must be really hard in your brain. And I was like, oh my God,
Thank you.
validated. I was like, yes, girl, it has been hard.
It has.
And all I said to her, I'm like, sometimes my brain just thinks too much and I get a bit anxious. And I'm like, sometimes I'm late to things and like I can't organize myself. And I was just like listing off things. And she's like, oh, that's really difficult.
Yeah, and like when someone just validates you, literally your nervous system just feels safe just to be around that person immediately.
I'm like, you don't even have a full picture of what this thing is, but you were able to empathize. And that's great.
Wow.
You
Bare
know?
minimum.
Also,
Thank you.
bare minimum. And also, our diagnosis is not a punchline. And I will say this till like the cows come home, whether if it's about autism or ADHD or OCD. You don't turn around and be like, oh, I'm a little bit ADHD. Oh, I'm a little bit like autistic. I'm a little bit like, you know, I have a little bit of OCD. Bro, these are real things that affect people every day. Stop.
But yes, in saying that, promoting nuance is a good thing where it's like, you can say things like ADHD traits can be universal, but ADHD as a disorder is not, right? The awareness is good, stigmatization is harmful. Both can be true.
So, does everyone have ADHD now? No.
No.
We're not witnessing an ADHD epidemic, guys. We're witnessing an awareness correction. It's a cultural shift, a long overdue recognition of neurodivergent experiences, and that's something to celebrate.
Yeah, because when people have language for their brains, they have power. When they understand themselves, they heal. And when we speak about ADHD with nuance, empathy, and responsibility, we create a world where neurodivergent minds can finally breathe and exist.
Fuck yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. Thank you. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Thanks for coming to our TED Talk. And like, yeah, actual TED Talk speaker here, Anushka. But yes, no, but I hope that really, I don't know, gave you some answers or things to talk about if you do kind of come across someone who invalidates your ADHD. And yeah,
And if you, in the moment, you can't come up with an answer for them, just send them this episode. It's fine.
and if all these professionals have told you you have ADHD, believe it.
Then you have it. Believe it.
Okay. Well, thank you. See you next time.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening.
And remember to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Girls That ADHD for more ADHD realness, to ask us questions, or slide into our DMs with episode ideas.
And sign up to our newsletter at girlsatatadhd.com to stay updated on new episodes, toolkits, workshops, and book in ADHD coaching if you're ready to work with your brain, not against it.
And if you found this episode useful, leave us a quick review because it really does help us reach more ADHDers and help them find us in the chaos.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye!